everybody. Welcome to the PVD Horror Podcast. My name is Dave, and I am here interviewing a very special young filmmaker. His name is Dima Barch, and he is from Russia originally, Moscow, and he's here in the United States, in LA, as we were just talking about off air. But you are a very young, upcoming, and like really, what's the one? I was really impressed with your filmmaking style. So I'm going to we're going to get into that a little bit and talk about some of your previous experiences. But Dima, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's like a huge thing because I've been listening to your podcast like a bunch of time, more than a year probably. It's a big honor for me for sure. Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you.
And it's interesting because rarely when people reach out to us, do we kind of look at their background and say, wow, I haven't really talked with someone with such an interesting background as you. And you just come off as like very like humble and nice, but it sounds like you've actually had a pretty you've had some challenges, you've had some interesting developments in life. So I was hoping that maybe we could talk about that initially, and just kind of like maybe some of your previous time. You could kind of talk a little bit about your time in Russia.
It's kind of a long story, to be honest, because I started working when I was a kid, look like a teenager. I was 14 and I started doing journalism. Firstly, it was like film journalism, and I just, I was this film nerd, cinephile kid who was like winning this social media competition to get into these private screenings, film premieres, and stuff like that. And one of these premieres ended up being not a premiere, but a press screening. And at this press screening, it was the movie called Now You See Me, Louis Leterrier, 2014, I guess, or something like that, or 13. Yeah, and I met this person who was like covering film for small online media, and I just asked her if I could, work with them. And I started writing articles and film reviews, and then step by step, I ended up being like one of the probably not most famous, but recognizable film journalists in Russia, being published by Forbes, GQ, The Hollywood Reporter, different big Russian media outlets. I've been to Marvel film set and doing like different screenings and productions for the films. I was running this like old theater in Moscow, and it was like pretty fancy life, especially when you're like super young. I achieved all of these things by the age of 22 or something. But the thing which is going with this stuff is you're burned out.
Yeah.
And after burning out or something, I almost committed suicide. Sorry for bringing that up, but it was like really crucial for me because, I just got at that time my undergrad in journalism. My major was in journalism, and I started thinking about film because, journalism was like the very first door to this world, film world, which I was fascinated with my whole life. Because, my daddy brought me to the theaters and showed me some films, like big blockbuster movies when I was a kid. One of the first experiences on screen was for me Casino Royale or Star Wars Episode 3, which was like crucial experience for me as well. And there's a lot of things like that. But, journalism, as I told you, was like very first door to this world, but probably wasn't my door. Yeah. And I was too young at that age to process that. And when I started thinking about transition to filmmaking, I directed some theatrical plays. I got like a lot of connections to pull that off, but it was hard to make. And I just did this transition, and I made my first short called Dead End back in 2021. still doing some journalism and entrepreneur
Wait.
jobs.
I have to interrupt you for a second.
Yeah, yeah,
Dead End was your first project?
yeah. It was my first. It was directorial debut or
Wow.
something.
That's impressive. I got to check out Dead End. That is impressive. I would never guess that for that to be somebody's first short film, their first
Yeah,
directorial debut. Very impressive.
thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I did some, like school works when I was getting my master's, but it was
Yeah.
like, I mean, it were not like films or something.
What
It
did you get
just,
your master's in?
it's like a film school in Moscow. I didn't finish it because of the war and being pushed from the country, but I was close to my thesis. I was covering some sort of like queer web series and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, technically I was getting my film education, but like these people unfortunately knew like way less than myself with my,
Yeah.
like viewer experience and being
Oh,
just fascinated
so
with film.
being around when you were a journalist and being around all the films and the filmmakers really gave you a lot of experience that you couldn't like get from just regular schooling.
I guess it's more about, connections,
Yeah.
like hearing the stories, interviewing people like directors, actors, and people like that. And also, like just viewer experience. Because I had to watch a lot. I mean, not only as a cinephile, but also for my work. So I was like into film so much. My life is basically film. I'm so
Yeah.
dedicated to film. So it was like a huge thing. It's like QT way of, learning things like
Yeah.
quality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a really sensitive question?
Yeah, sure.
Would you say, because like hearing your story, it sounds like you at one point you had a really low time, and that was kind of when you decided to transition into filmmaking. Is that kind of how it went? So
Yeah.
in a way, did like that transition into film kind of save your life because it gave you like a new direction, a new
Yes.
purpose?
Yeah. I mean, filmmaking is hard, and especially when you're up and comer filmmaker. But at that moment, it was some sort of, like a huge step up in terms of my mental health.
Yeah.
Because I was able to push, like myself into film, to put my story into the scripts. In this like very first script which I wrote was Dead End, and then feature script which I written right after Dead End, firstly in Russian, now it's in English. Yeah, it was a huge hand in terms of that for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I think like from like an existentialist point of view, um when we our life feels like it's lacking meaning or purpose, it can become really challenging, and we hit those rock bottom lows. It just sounds like you hit. But then when you start to find your purpose or your meaning, which it sounds very much like you found yours, and you're starting
Yeah.
to act on it, it gives you this like new resurgence in life, which it sounds like film school and actually getting involved in making your first films really did for you.
Yeah, exactly. But it was harsh a bit because, like on the one hand, people knew me and I got my like, good level of credibility to
Yeah.
be financed for the short or something like that. But at the same time, like we got the flip side of this coin. A lot of people were considering me as a journalist, as like public person, but not as a director. And I was introduced in each and every, like this small group of bubble as a journalist, as an entrepreneur,
Wow.
and I was like so angry, even mad
Yeah.
because of
Yeah.
that. Because like I was like so pushy. I've been trying to make this transition, but it was so like tough. Yeah, even
It's
being
you're trying to break out of that bubble. You don't want to be
yeah
just seen as this journalist. And it's so funny because for some people, they would probably love for that recognition. Like
maybe
if their desire was to become like a head journalist or a top journalist, they would love that. But for you, it's like I really want to make this transition because you identify as a filmmaker. And
exactly, and
yeah,
yeah.
it's frustrating for you.
For sure. And like another bummer was that at that time I started doing some sort of political and social journalism, which was connected to my generation, Gen Z, and our attitude to Russian opposition, which was connected to my sexual identity and covering LGBTQ plus stories. And I was like hated by a lot of people. And I was bullied by some sort of like old journalists on Facebook. And it was like another thing to process.
Yeah.
It gets me being more, powerful and strengthful, especially when you're going to art where, like you could be hated in a minute. But at that time, I was a kid and I got my appreciation, but also got my
Yeah.
haters. And
Yeah.
it was tough as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean,
It's
it was a roller coaster even
absolutely.
before filmmakers journey.
It's interesting because the same thing that will probably open doors for you will cause other people to keep their doors closed.
Yeah.
So it's a really tough road that you're navigating, but I love that you're taking chances. You're young, you're kind of just like going forward. You're like you said, you're pushy, so you're gonna do it. And that's awesome that like kind of like flashing forward to your more recent project, Power of Strike. I mean, that's getting a lot of like notoriety, and you were able to kind of premiere that at Beyond Fest, or I don't know if you would say
Yes.
premiere, but you were able to. That was featured at Beyond Fest.
And yeah, for sure. And Beyond Fest, and we will talk about that. It's like a really big thing for me because
Yeah.
I'm an alumni. The Dan premiered Beyond Fest. The Power of the Strike played Beyond Fest. And for the industry, it's like a big deal for sure.
Yes.
And the next step, it could be just, like general festivals and general recognition like Sundance and South by and stuff like that. But like I needed this recognition at that moment. So I'm so sorry. A bit of backstory. I just did the dent and wrote my first feature, and the war between Russia and Ukraine started.
Yeah.
And I got this idea, as a lot of people around myself, that we could be persecuted because, like it was some sort of a crucial change for the government, for the country. And I was right, because, like after leaving the country, it got just 8 months to came police to my mom's place like 8 times. And I'm technically persecuted in Russia. I can't go back. And but like for me, it was like another thing that just stopped me. So I just did this transition, and I was considering myself as a young filmmaker. I got like some sort of being close to pull my first feature off, and I had to flee the country with a duffel bag, $200, and just go to Istanbul, Turkey with nothing, with no backup plan, and being like pretty famous in Moscow and being nobody to the world.
Yeah.
And at that time, the Dan got no selections. I like was, as I told you, nobody. And very first like big call for me was just this being selected by Beyond Fest. They didn't know me. It wasn't like sort of, telling my story personally or stuff like that. I just submitted the film and they just picked me up. And after that, it was like a snowball effect. A lot of things started happening and still are happening, but it's so slow. And but yeah, I'm so glad that I'm sticking around these people from Beyond Fest, which are like probably the finest people in the world.
That's amazing. That is amazing. So did you were able to attend Beyond Fest?
Yeah. Now for me, it's like the full circle thing because they selected Dead End back in 2022. I wasn't here in LA, so I wasn't able to attend the festival. Last year, I attended the whole festival being in LA, but with no movie. And now, finally, Beyond Fest is happening right now. The closing night is going to be tomorrow. And I'm here, like, going through the whole thing with my movie, finally, with seeing my film almost in my, like hometown theater, which is Lost Village 3. And it's really magical experience for me right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's amazing. That is amazing. Have you been featured in other film fests as well? I kind of remember, I think, was it Salem Horror Fest that
Yeah.
were featured
Yeah.
into?
Yeah. The dent weirdly ended up being like probably one of the most recognizable Russian horror movies ever made. We did like 25 film festivals. We
Wow.
just won Portland Horror Film Festival last June. And I got this award, which was like another huge step up for me at Salem Horror Fest. This award called Romero Film Fellowship.
Yes.
Thanks to this film festival for sure. And this special award means you being connected to like some sort of, big people from the
Yeah.
industry. And for me,
Yeah.
this person was Carter Smith, who became my mentor. And
Yeah.
I love him so much right now. And he's so supportive. And without him, probably I couldn't, like make the power of the strike, because his advice was like really unique and turning point for this movie.
You know, um, Carter was on the show a
Yeah,
while
you know.
back. Yeah. And when I saw that he was your mentor at one point, when I was watching Power Strike, I was like, I think I can see some influences, some Carter Smith influences in there, and it's in a like in the best way possible. Very unique to yourself, but also like you can see some of that as well. And so what was, without getting like maybe too personal or sharing too many secrets, what would you say was been like some of the most impactful like advice he's been able to give?
Um,
If you're willing to share, if it's a secret, then keep it a
yeah,
secret.
yeah. I mean, I'm trying to find, like the right thing to tell.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, probably the most important thing from his side was his study, his story behind Swallowed.
yeah.
Because Carter is like a big figure from the industry, big person for like filmmaking. His cultural and industrial impact is huge. I saw the ruins when I was like literally a kid, and it was like
Yeah.
really dream come true moment for me when we were watching my movie The End together at Salem Horror Fest, and he was like, "Oh, I'm really like rooting for you," and just sitting next to him was like, as I told you,
Yeah.
dream come true moment. But after that, I heard the story behind Swallowed, which was like self-financed, which was like super indie, low budget movie. But the point is that you'll never say that. It's such a great movie in terms of its visual part of it.
Yeah.
It's like um acting performances, its direction and stuff like that. And at that moment, Carter told me, "You got the script, like another script for the second short for the Power of the Strike, and this script is really good. You should do that even with no money." And I got this idea because like me and my co-producer at that moment in Berlin, we counted the budget, and the budget was like pretty high because, as you know, you've seen the movie. We got like a lot of practical effects, like some people are being killed, some like hands are being cut, and some things with some dicks and stuff like that. And I'm so into this like artificial lighting, like being super striking in the visuals. um and I was just waiting for some money, and he told me that I should do that with no money. And I found just, like really small piece of money, and we pulled it off with literally no money. And at the end of the day, I can say that I could do everything with nothing.
Yeah.
And after this, after shooting the strike and after being supported by Carter, I mean, it's like the best experience that I got from the Power of the Strike.
So for people listening, this is The Power of Strike is your 2023 short film. And the tagline for Power of Strike is one totally fucked up night in a bowling alley. That sums it up pretty well. I love that. Could you just tell the listeners like a short summary of essentially what that short film is about?
Yeah, it's about this person who is kidnapped by someone. Up until some point, you just don't know who this person behind this like sick game or something. And this person, the main character, got some sort of a chance to uh, avenge himself, to kill the person who abused him at the high school. So it was influenced by Livonell and the Saw franchise. It
Mhm.
was so influenced by Greg Araki and Carter Smith for sure. And so I decided to pull, like to put my anxiety to this movie, my appreciation to these people who I admire for sure. And and trying to tell the story in my unique way.
Yeah.
And I'm really glad that a lot of people see that. A lot of people compare this movie with Ellie De Palma or Greg Araki or George A. Romero, which I'm like blown away by.
That's amazing. Those comparisons, just even having your film be thrown in there with those names is just like that's such
Yeah,
an
yeah.
amazing
I mean,
accomplishment itself.
I'm still trying to process that.
So one of the things that I see in like Dead End, the first film we were talking about, and Power of Strike, there's this like theme of somebody that's like uh seeking, they're like struggling with a decision to make, right? And that
Mhm.
feels like, I feel like when I watch that and I see that theme in both the films, I was like, that must be like a personal thing that you must be trying, like coming out in your filmmaking. Is that something that you relate to, like this almost like sort of like revenge, but also this like internal struggle of like, do I go forward with that action or do I not? Kind of feeling that like internal anxiety.
Yes, you're definitely right. Like being an activist in the country like Russia and struggling with all of this, like suppression and being like just a queer person in the country that,
Yeah.
like just doesn't like queer people or any different people. It got me being like an activist in terms of my movies as well. And I love this way of storytelling, way of filmmaking, which is like going through Jordan Peele movies, for example. He's trying to talk about his community, um, about his people through this genre lens. And I'd love to talk about my community, my people, queer people through this genre lens. Even, like in this sort of big studio Hollywood range of movies. I wrote my first feature. It's kind of like It Ask movie, with the like people who are like dying um one by one, and but still with a lot of like queer themes within. And speaking of the dent, it came from like really personal story.
Yeah.
It's basically loosely based story on my true story.
Sure.
I one of my favorite movies is It Follows. I've seen this movie 59 times. I'm counting, and at that moment I was like, I need to do something like this, and I got this story. I I went through this breaking up, and the person who was like on the other side of this breaking up, this person was like, if I would see you somewhere, I would beat you up, and I was so scared. I was seeing this person like each and every person around myself, and I got this like sort of paranoia or something. And I
Yeah.
decided to put this paranoia to this
Wow. You
like
know what?
dreamy world.
That's exactly what I thought was being represented in this film. So I just want to share this, like, so hopefully people will check this film out. This is Dead End. But there's this scene towards the end of it where there's these two docs and he lays down on a dock that he's kind of been running away from, that person that's following him, that the vision of the ex, I guess you would say, that's following him. And then all of a sudden you see on the other dock that person appears, and they're laying down as well. And then the person goes into the water, drowns him, attempts to drown him. It's almost like you're being drowned by that feeling of like being followed, or you can't lose it. It's drowning you, all those feelings that you're having. And then at some point he rises out, he does what he needs to do to get rid of that. But it's also kind of representing of like being like that moment where like you have to kind of accept that sometimes you do shitty things to people too, because he does something that kind of makes him have to run away, right? That he didn't really necessarily want to do, but he felt like he had to. And at some point you got to kind of like move past that and like put it away. So that felt like that moment when he stands up on the dock after kind of getting rid of that guy and putting him back in the water. It felt like so powerful, because he was like kind of moving on, but also kind of swallowing that like I had to do some actions that I didn't want to do, that weren't maybe who I am as a person.
And unfortunately, it was like very first moment when he got his like um a moment with himself. Like he got his back. I don't know.
Yeah.
Uh, just like fresh air or something.
Yes.
With this, like cigarette, which is
Yes.
he smoking. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Super powerful. And yeah, like I finished that film and I was like immediately started to go into like analyze mode. So I really enjoyed that moment. And same with The Power of Strike. I mean, for short films, they leave you thinking about them for quite a while. So that is like,
And
to me, that's like the measure of what I think is a good film.
and for me, it means a lot because it's like personal stories, and I'd like to stick to my guns. Like I
Yeah.
just wrote another short, which is like even more personal, and probably if I like will be able to pull it off, would be my scariest thing up until this
Cool.
moment. It's like haunted story set in a diner. Um, and yeah, I'm trying to tell these personal stories, but like in this like roller coaster
Yeah.
type of storytelling, because uh, being from Russia, and like being some sort of in a vein of Tarkovsky and Eisenstein movies, which we were lost, unfortunately, because, like recent Russian filmmaking was like about really good scripts, but not about good craftsmanship. And I'm
Mhm.
so fascinated with craftsmanship, like with filmmakers like Ty West or, I
Yeah.
don't know, Brian De Palma, when each and every shot is like meaningful.
Yes.
And for me, like doing shortlisting, storyboarding is like an essential thing. I went through math high school, so I'm pretty mathematical in terms of building the craft, and for me, like form is a part of substance.
Yeah. I'll never forget. I took a film class and we were talking about M. Night Shyamalan's The Sixth Sense.
Another great person to tell about.
Eh,
Yeah.
Literally every shot had a meaning, and there was like hidden things. What do you call that? Mise en scène, that thing that like, even the color of certain things was very intentional. Just like everything had intention to carry on the story. And that's such an amazing concept. So I totally agree with you. I love when people put that thought into their shots, and it's not just like thrown together just to as a device just to carry on the dialogue. It's just, that's filmmaking, right? That all around big picture of it.
And then M. Night is like probably the best example of that because
Yeah.
he's so weird. He's so like in his own world, but he's so like good craftsman,
Yes,
and he
absolutely.
knows what he's doing.
Yes. Yep.
And you can say that especially with his like latest movies like Trap or Alt,
Hmm.
which were like not that well received by
Sure.
some people, but
Yeah,
actually each and every film of his is divisive,
that's
and
very true.
and
Yep.
I love that.
One of there was a quote that you had that I thought was really powerful, and I think it kind of explains a lot about you and why you make the films you make and the way they come out. But it was about your time in Russia and just feeling like there was no room for LGBTQ plus movies or film. And you said there's a war against gay cinema. And I thought that was really interesting to think about what that must feel like, to feel like your entire community, society, country is restricting you from making the art that you want to make based on how you identify, based on who you are as a person. You're not able to make the cinema that you want to create. It takes away all artistic ability, right? So then what does it
Um,
leave? It leaves people making films for someone else, right?
right. I mean, if it's gonna be like the short answer, but yeah, Russia got a lot of talented people, like cinematographers, directors, writers, actors. Like Russian acting school probably is like the best in the world, and I can say that, you know, like after working with Russian actors, with like German actors, with like American actors. Um, but you know, like at the same time, these people just are not supported by the government in a good way. Um, and my probably like the best feeling in terms of that is being jealous. Because a lot of European filmmakers, especially now, especially in the genre field, filmmakers like Sebastian Vanicek, who did the movie called Infested, or Julia Ducournau,
Yep.
or like a lot of people from European countries, which are like really talented, but you know, like they just got this opportunity to tell the stories which they, you know, like want to tell. And when you are like going through some things that you wanna, you know, like put on the screen, you just got no chance to do that. You
Yeah.
just need to do something, I don't know, like comedies or something way away from, sorry, from like the real world.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when you're like unique person in terms of sexual identity or,
Sure.
you know, like traumas and stuff like that. Um, yeah, that's a bummer. And now being like completely alone in a different country, being in the US and trying to, you know, like to get my rep, to get my feature films financed. I wrote 2 features, 3 shorts. I can say that it's really tough. And I'm really, I don't know, in a good way or in a bad way, jealous to these people who just in their countries and trying to make their like first steps being supported by people around, by their like
Right.
government. And
It's a
they
totally different experience. Yeah.
yeah, and it's like a huge struggle with your national identity.
Mm.
How I got like really huge identity crisis in terms of my sexual identity, in terms of my national identity, because you know, like Russians are like so aggressive right now, like because of the war. Russians, like I was like so far from Russian culture because you know, like I was so far, I was like raised in a different type of cultural environment.
Yeah.
Like I was grown up with a Cartoon Network and American cartoons like Courage the Cowardly Dog or Scooby Doo or stuff
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
that, or Hey Arnold, or you know, like this Halloween specials from Simpsons. Um, yeah, and I wasn't like I was like a white crown, you know, like for Russian
Yeah.
culture.
Yeah. That's such an interesting perspective. And that really resonates hearing you say that about just like that curiosity about what it must be like to be a filmmaker who has the support of not just like their peers, but also their country. I'm
Yes.
sure that's taken for granted by so many people. So that's a really powerful statement right there.
Because
Um,
you know, like one of my favorite filmmakers, his name Luca Guadagnino, and he started in his own country, and his movies were like partially supported and financed by the government, by
yeah,
Italy at that moment, and now he's like one of the biggest figures in scene on the scene, you know, and just, like seeing stories like his or stories like different people, I'm like just bummed because, like I just can't do my first steps like this.
Yeah. But you're going to have a very unique path. And one thing that I do know is that you're very good at connecting with people. I think you're very much like a go-getter. And you'll just reach out to people because I know that you're familiar with some of the filmmakers that we've had on the show, and just kind of like I see you kind of like crossing paths with a lot of people. So I feel like, as much as it must be great to have the support of your country and kind of had that early leg up, I feel like you're kind of right there because you just have that like innate ability to just connect with people and network, and that's the most important thing above everything.
Unfortunately, yes, because like it's not a part of my job. I mean, I'd love just being on set and
Yeah.
directing people and shots and actors, working with the actors and stuff like that. But like unfortunately, just to get your movie done, you need to go through this, like I don't know, hustling
Yeah.
and
Oh yeah.
just forcing yourself to introduce yourself to different people. Like,
Mhm.
especially when you're like going through your legends. Like the other night at Beyond Fest, I just, like passed by Lionel and
Yeah.
started conversation with them. And it was like unique moment for me. And I'm trying to do things like that. But
Yeah.
like I'm an introvert. I'm like introverted person.
You
And
are you're introvert.
yeah, yeah. And it's so tough to me sometimes. But like journalism taught
Yeah.
me, like how to do that.
I
And
always talk about that. I like sometimes, even if like, because I'm an introvert too, like I'm very shy and usually pretty quiet, but like when you put on a different hat, sometimes you become a different person. So like in my work,
exactly.
I'm not introverted. When I'm doing this, I'm not introverted. Uh, but at
You
home,
you
yeah, I'm totally
e-
different.
exactly. And
Yeah.
you just going forward because like I got like really funny story to tell. Back to 2019, I was doing press junket in London for Jumanji, for the sequel for Jumanji
Okay. Yeah.
movie. And I was interviewing The Rock and Kevin Hart, which were like paired. And I was so scared because like it was very first international junket for me. I mean, I've been interviewing different celebrities, but it was in
Wow.
Moscow, surrounded by, like Russian publicists and stuff like that, like in a safe space.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but at that moment, I was like so scared. I was literally shaking. And I was like stepped into the room, and just sat down. And the very first thing that The Rock told me, he mixed me up with Harry Styles. And he told me, "Oh, how your like solo career is going." And I was like, whew, released at that moment. So your life is like this. You are so scared, and then you're facing The Rock, who is joking about you and your like experience, and you're
Yeah.
good. Yeah,
No, that's your life. That's not the average person's life. That is your
maybe.
life. That is amazing. See, like, yeah, that is, you really have had an interesting life at, yeah, at a very young age. You have had a very interesting life. So that is pretty amazing.
Yeah,
Um,
interesting, but pretty dark, like going through eating disorders or like being far from your family and friends and deserted in this like city when you can get this feeling of alienation in a minute.
Absolutely.
But yeah, yeah, I
you
mean,
are you are in a very cutthroat city, so you
yeah,
do have to keep that in mind, that does come with the territory. There are friendlier places to be if you ever choose to move,
yeah.
but I understand, like, you're in LA to do that journey and to make your mark on the film industry. So obviously we're rooting for you, and you
And
know we're here for whatever you need, however we can support you in that journey as well. So
And thank you so much. It's huge. It's huge, just huge. Because like filmmaking in general is not that welcoming, like people. But the genre community is so supportive, is
absolutely.
so warm and nice. And these people are trying to root for, like themselves.
Yeah.
Because, like we are crazy. making like genre movies, you need to be just, like crazy person. And I'm yeah, I really appreciate this support. Yeah.
Absolutely. Can you do me a favor? Can you tell our viewers and listeners when or where they can check out Power of the Strike, and also where they can check out Dead End?
The Dead End is pretty complicated, and if any of your listeners would love to check this out, you just reach me out.
Okay.
Or this person need to reach me out, like through my socials. I'm on Instagram or Twitter or somewhere else,
Yep.
or Letterboxd. And in terms of the Power of the Strike, it's gonna be on Screambox on this like a Bloody Bites series, which is available on Roku, Tubi, and
So cool.
platforms like that. Pretty soon, it's gonna be on October 18th, I guess.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and the other thing to tell, it's gonna be on YouTube channel of Dread Central. I hope so. We just got this conversation with this media, and it would be available for everyone in November or December or something like that. Because like now we need to go through this Milieu competition at the Imagine Film Festival, which is in Amsterdam, and after that we're gonna be like publicly everywhere. I hope so, at least, because like it's an essential thing to be seen by people
Yes.
as far as I can achieve,
So, Dima, as you mentioned, you are on social media. I think, are all your social media is just your name?
Yeah, it's Dima Barch, pretty easy, to be.
And same on Letterboxd, people can find you as well, and they can follow you and check out all the latest.
Yeah, I'm doing my diary. Like I'm watching a lot, and last year I've seen 420 films. This year I'm going hit this amount of films as well. I'm a huge movie nerd. I just love movies.
That's impressive. That is impressive. And Dima, tell us, is there anything else that people should be looking out that you have coming out, or should we just kind of like make sure we check out Power of Strike when that hits Screambox for the moment?
Yeah, I hope I just could, like pull some things off again, and I will do some shorts or finally launch my feature, one of these features, or like something else. I'm so like open to the opportunities to work as a director writer, and something like that, because like when you're losing everything in your life, you got this idea what is really meaningful. And for me, one and only thing is meaningful is filmmaking. It's film.
No, I like I said in the beginning, I firmly believe this, that like true fulfillment in life is finding what's meaningful or what our purpose is and moving forward in that direction. And that's what makes us feel fulfilled. When we don't do that, it leaves us feeling empty. And obviously, that's when we kind of struggle the most. So I give you so much credit. I think you're a super brave and courageous person for the journey that you've been on. And I think you're also super talented. So those things all combined is a scary combination. So I think you have a very bright future. I know we look forward.
If I survive,
you will. We look forward to what you have upcoming next. But also, I make sure if you ever come to the East Coast, make sure you message us so we can hopefully meet up in person. That would be amazing. For a privilege to be able to do that.
I'm going to be there soon. So
okay, all right. So
I'm going to New York and to North Carolina for this festival, small festival in city called Winston-Salem.
Yeah.
Awesome. So yeah, I'm trying, like to go different places.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Dima, thank you so much for joining us. Everybody, make sure you look out for Power of Strike, and also take him up on that offer. Hit him up to see Dead End. I think you're going to be really impressed, and it will kind of gives you a really amazing glimpse at like the first feature of this upcoming filmmaker, which I think people are going to be kind of like blown away by. So Dima, thanks again, and hopefully we get to chat soon.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me, and thanks for your such like warm and nice words. It means a lot. Absolutely.
All right, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. We will see you for another episode next week, or maybe this week. I don't know. We're throwing out episodes all the time. So we'll see you whenever, and have a great night. See you later.